now, Sherilyn Harley-LeBone, Republican strategist and former senior counsel to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. Also, Bob Weiner, Democratic strategist and former Clinton White House staff member. Thanks both for joining us.
Great to be with you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
So this week, the White House announced another change to the Affordable Care Act. March 31st was supposed to be the last day to enroll, but now uninsured Americans will essentially have until mid-April to do so. The White House says this is for Americans who face special circumstances or complex cases and need that extra time to complete their enrollment. But needless to say, leaders in the Republican Party were not so happy. Take a listen.
You know, he hasn't put enough loopholes into the law already. The administration is now resorting to an honor system to enforce it. The hell is this, a joke?
Bob, the president's made at least 10 major deadline changes to the Affordable Care Act. Isn't this just a bit ridiculous at this point?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Bob.
You know, the joke is the Republicans who want to stop Americans from having health care. 6 million have signed up, and the fact that there was a huge glitch at the beginning means that why not give a few extra weeks to let people actually have health care for the first time so we enter what every other nation on earth provides?
Sherilyn?
I think it's just another indication of the major problems that we have with Obamacare. The other issue that we've been seeing is that many state exchanges are having a lot of problems. Oregon, Maryland, Nevada have all expressed major problems with getting people to sign up. So, I mean, it's really an indication of a larger issue. And the fact that, again, premiums are continuing to rise for individuals. You know, our family, we all have allergies. Nasonex is now $66 based on the new formulary that has come out with Obamacare. I mean, these are everyday problems for just ordinary working Americans.
Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has had his own response for the Republican Party. Take a listen.
And the joke, I say to my dear friend John Boehner, is him having more than 60 votes over there to terminate Obamacare. This is, and I just think that we're at a point now where it really does appear to be extremely disingenuous that they oppose anything that's good about Obamacare, anything good about anything this administration tries to do.
After announcing the deadline extension, the White House says more than 6 million Americans have enrolled in the new health care exchanges. Sherilyn, is Reid right? Does the GOP just want to see this law fail?
No. I mean, what we'd like to see is a law that is workable, that is, you know, based on free market solutions. And what we've got is moving towards a system that I think really is bound to fail based on this initial rollout, all of the problems, you know, continuing number of young people that aren't signing up for it. And again, we all know, looking at the numbers, we needed a certain number of young people to sign up, and the numbers just aren't there.
And yet, all along, despite all those problems, the White House was saying we have to wait until late March to see what those numbers are. And in fact, the White House says 6 million people. That's a lot of people, Bob.
Well, not only that, but I'm sorry, Sherilyn, but you got to operate on the facts, not on the myths. More and more young people, just like a last-minute term paper, are signing up. They're coming in droves. The Washington Post headlined that already. And you're getting somewhere closer now to the 40% that is needed to make the system
Bob,
work
we're
properly.
nowhere near 40%.
And not only that, I will finish the point if it's okay, Sherilyn. Not only that, but it's actually the numbers are showing that people are saving money, and every time people say that they're not, then you do a cross-check on the facts, and they haven't looked at the possibilities of what they can get under the Obamacare exchanges, and you also haven't looked at the expansion, which is in the millions on Medicaid. So people are getting health care. This is an enormous revolution that is wonderful. The Republicans simply want to turn it back to the insurance companies and take us back to the dark ages.
Well, my question is, if we're doing so well, why is it always so difficult to get the administration to release the actual numbers? We are nowhere near 40%. All you get are these estimates, but we're nowhere near 40% with the younger individuals signing up in order to really make this work. We're not there, and we're not at 40%, Bob.
Well, you're getting closer and closer, and the point
but
that
we're
Jay
not
Carney,
there, Bob.
There's an answer to your question. Jay Carney made the point that Republicans don't like to admit this, but this is through the private sector. You know, Bob Dole proposed this program, and Richard Nixon endorsed something similar to this. So this is not a socialist program. This is through the private insurance companies. That is one of the things we didn't do, was go to a single payer other system, which actually would have been better. But we went through the private insurance companies. So private insurance companies have proprietary information. That's a point that Jay Carney made, and that's why you can't get the numbers that you want. It's why you can't see the...
Well, Jay Carney is not the final, arbiter on all of this.
Hopefully we'll get more details. We love data, reporters do. But another issue under intense scrutiny is the birth control mandate. This week, the Supreme Court heard arguments in the Hobby Lobby case, and at the heart of the issue, whether or not companies with religious objections should be required to provide free contraceptives to their employees. Bob, if this mandate is struck down, could we expect more changes to the ACA?
You know, contraception is not religion. 99% of American women use contraception. Sherilyn, what would you do if you couldn't afford it?
You know, here's I think the narrative that really needs to be corrected. The Green family, who are the owners of Hobby Lobby, they support 16 out of 20 FDA-approved contraceptives. 16 out of 20. They are only morally object to 4, which they believe terminates life. And I think it's important for Americans to understand that the freedom to access birth control is not dependent on your employer. So, for example, we all have Second Amendment protections guaranteed under the Constitution, but your employer isn't obligated to provide employees with guns. So, a woman's access to birth control is not being limited in any way.
But what about the concept in the Constitution, the First Amendment, the freedom to express your religion? Under this debate, in this debate over this case, Sherilyn, do you believe that a private for-profit company can exercise religion?
I believe that a private company has the right to object to offering a particular type of birth control if they feel it violates their religious freedom. And in this particular case, the Greens believe it violates their religious freedom because they believe these 4 types of contraceptives terminate life. And that's what they believe in. And I believe, as a small business, they have the right to do that.
What about the politics of this case, Sherilyn? The GOP has faced this issue before, called the war on women, according to the Democratic Party. What do you think about that phrase?
Well, I mean, I think it's a false narrative because, as I've indicated, the Greens support 16 out of 20 FDA-approved contraceptives, including birth control. They're in no way trying to limit a woman's access to birth control. No way whatsoever. And again, I compare this same argument to infertility coverage. Many men and women would like infertility coverage, but either their employers or the health insurance companies don't offer it. Well, it doesn't mean they're not going to get it. They're just going to buy it or get it some other way. Same thing here. Women, if the Greens don't offer these four types of contraceptives, they're welcome to go and purchase it at the pharmacy themselves, which don't require a prescription, by the way.
A final question on this case, if I could, Bob. Inside the courtroom, our colleagues were not allowed to have cameras or recording devices inside, but it sounded like the majority of the justices were skeptical about this birth control mandate. Do you think it's going to get struck down?
Well, you got to listen to the 3 women. It's sort of bizarre to have a bunch of males making the decision for women. And by the way, when Sherilyn says 16 out of 20, a quarter of the methods that people would want to use, they want to deny. This is an issue. You asked about the politics of it. The Republicans lose big time. It's probably why Terry McAuliffe won for governor of Virginia, is the fact that there is such a war on women by the Republican Party, no matter what Sherilyn says. So to have them, they lose at least 10 points, and they lost the single women vote by 40 points in Virginia and nationwide because of their attacks across the country. Any way they can do it, any little way they can tweak it on women's rights. So this is a disastrous issue for Republicans. They haven't realized it, and they keep playing into it. It really helps Democrats.
Let's move on, if we could. Democrats have ramped up their push for immigration reform. And 9 months ago, the Senate pushed through bipartisan legislation that would create a path to citizenship for millions of undocumented people in our country. On Thursday, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said only one thing is standing in the way. Take a listen.
1,100 people a day are deported. 11 million people are waiting to have their status adjusted. One person is standing in the way of that happening. One person. So we're saying to the Speaker, just give us a vote.
Both parties agree something needs to be done on this issue, but there's no traction at this point. Last year it seemed inevitable, but Bob, is immigration reform dead?
I believe it is, and the honest answer on this is actually there are many votes in both parties that don't want this bill to go forward, as tragic as that is, and as much as it denies the rights of the children of illegal immigrants who were here through no fault of their own to have a life in America. But it seems that they are so afraid of the right wing on this issue that I don't think this is going anywhere. And if it goes anywhere, it's simply going to be on enforcement and more people at the border, Border Patrol and National Guard at the border. It's not going into expanding the rights of immigrants.
Carolyn, are you concerned politically losing this issue?
As much as the other side wants to paint this as a right-wing problem, majority of Americans, as well as majority of Hispanic Americans, do believe that they think that those who have come to the United States legally have the right to be here, should be here. We want to encourage those who have come here legally, but we also don't want to provide the incentive or reward those who have come here illegally. And that's what a majority of Hispanic Americans believe.
Let's switch gears if we could. All week, President Obama's been in Europe meeting with world leaders. He's also been speaking out against Russian aggression in Ukraine. Listen.
Russia is a regional power that is threatening some of its immediate neighbors, not out of strength, but out of weakness.
Those comments caused quite a stir. Many are calling it a diss to Putin's power. Sherilyn, should the president make inflammatory comments like this, especially when he's calling for diplomacy, especially on tough issues like the Iran nuclear program?
You know, what's more alarming is not necessarily the comments, but really the lack of leadership that I think our president has exercised here. And what's important is what many have said, and foreign policy experts, when you have a vacuum of leadership, that's when leaders like Putin, when Bashir in Syria move in, of course in Iran, and we have not been as strong on our foreign policy that we have needed to be in the past 5 years. And again, when others see that vacuum, that is when people like Putin move in and start doing the things that they're doing in Crimea.
And yet, Bob, foreign policy hawks like Senator McCain are always calling on President Obama to talk tough on Putin and all these other world leaders that we may be at odds with. It seems like the president can't win for losing.
Well, you're right. And there isn't a war that McCain hasn't wanted to create. He keeps talking now about arming the Ukrainians. You know, President Obama has a pretty strong foreign policy. He went in and got bin Laden when Bush gave it to the Afghanis and they didn't know how to do it. Obama kept it with our secret operations, and we got it done. That's pretty tough. And so he ended bin Laden when no one else could. With Ukraine, you know, we're giving $1 billion to them. The IMF is giving $17 billion to them. We're going to arm them and we're going to allow them financially, economically, stability-wise, to be a secure country. And that's the smart thing to do. The Republicans really have no alternate policy other than exactly what Obama has done, plus the sanctions that he has done against the Russians.
And that will be the final word this week. Bob Weiner, Democratic strategist, and Sherilyn Harley-Lebone, Republican strategist. Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.